Got blowing orange laws, meaning you pursue at your own cause. Last of a breed to do it how we was taught. Gods in the rafters covering you and yours. Gather round the world's
All right, we rolling. Got the beats dropping. Let's get into this, man. Let's get into this. Yo, what up, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another game preview. We got the New York Knicks hosting the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you know what that means. Julius, Randle, DiVincenzo are returning back to Madison Square Garden. And you know they want to come back with a vengeance. But you know who else wants to get some vengeance? Karl-Anthony Towns, baby. So this is going to be skyrockets. This is what we're going to get. We're going to get fireworks in tomorrow's game, man. And let's get ready for this matchup. And who better to help me get ready for tomorrow's matchup other than Ben Beacon? He's a beacon of hope for the Minnesota Timberwolves, all right? He covers the Minnesota Timberwolves for Locked On Timberwolves. So make sure to follow him and subscribe. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. All right, guys, let's get into this. Let's get this conversation rolling. Ben, how you doing, man? How you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Look, the Knicks, they won a game. They're on a 2-game winning streak after going on a 3-game skid. So, people are now happy. The fan base is happy. There was a little doom and gloom thinking that this team was mid, awful. You just keep running down the list. There's high expectations for this Knicks team, Ben. So people just need to see that this team is competent and ready to compete for a championship title. But, other than that, I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, Knicks are back at home. They've been playing better at home this year. And, I still think, like, some of the teams they lost to, and maybe we'll get into this, but, like, the Bucks, the Bulls, I think they're both pretty good teams. I think Wolves are in a similar place, right? Like, the Wolves, there's a little bit of doom and gloom around the Wolves, too, but they've won a couple straight now, too.
Okay, there we go. So let's start this off first. And before we get to the Timberwolves, I gotta ask you about the Knicks, since this is a Knicks-centric show. So what did you think about the Knicks offseason moves, getting Jordan Clarkson, getting Gerson Yabusele? Let's start with those two players first.
Yeah, I mean, I think they both added elements to the Knicks that are important. I think Jordan Clarkson's more of a Mike Brown player probably than a Tibbs player, so that that made some sense. They could use a little bit of some of that punch, or they could have used a little bit of the punch from the backcourt especially when Jalen Brunson's not in the game. So I think that addition makes sense. I'm a big Yabusele fan. I think he adds a lot to the Knicks. It was a team that obviously, given cap constraints, wasn't going to do a whole lot other than make some moves around the edges, and I think they did a really good job with that, and I think ultimately both those guys are going to play a big role, both from a depth standpoint in the regular season, and I think ultimately, like, I don't know what the minutes load looks like for somebody like Yabusele, but I think, again, having the depth over the course of a long season, obviously already seen with the Mitchell Robinson injury, I think that's going to be important, and I think Jordan Clarkson, I mean, he's gonna play a really big role, and I think even in the playoffs when it comes to Clarkson, again, the non-Brunson minutes, I'm sure, and you guys would know better than me so far this year, but my hunch is that that's going to be a really important thing for him to kind of come through in those moments.
Absolutely, especially with Jordan Clarkson, you need him to, essentially fill in for the role of Jalen Brunson, not be exactly Jalen Brunson,
Right.
but you're going to need a guy who's able to break down the defense, get to the cup, create his own shot, and that's what we were lacking last season. Is that once Brunson left the floor, there was nobody else that can create their own shot. Yeah. Karl-Anthony Towns, as you know, efficient scorer, but he's not really a guy that you hand the rock to. It's like, all right, Cat, go create for yourself, man. He really gets going once the flow of the offense and guys are looking for him. So when you don't have Brunson out there, that's when we saw this team struggle in the postseason, and it was a big grind. It was like watching gears just grind every single night, facing the Detroit Pistons, going against the Boston Celtics, ultimately losing to the Indiana Pacers. But it just felt like a struggle, and so hopefully Clarkson is able to relieve Brunson and just allow that ease for this team to get some better looks with somebody who's able to just keep the defense on their toes. So that's what we're hoping for Jordan Clarkson. And so far, he's done that the last 2 games. Looks like he's starting to get into a good flow. And then with Yabusele, as you mentioned, he's still trying to find his way. It's been a very up and down, but look, it's only like 7 games in. We're talking about 7 games into the regular season. I'm going to give him some time, even though there's been some wild and flagrant nicknames coming through the chat. And I know people want me to say it. I'm not going to say it. We're not going to talk about it. It's just wild. CP already did it. I'm not going to do that. So, Yabu, you just need some time, man. But we get the vision there. We get the vision, Ben.
Yeah, and I think the Clarkson thing also, like, I mean, you mentioned like creating their own offense from the backcourt, in addition to what Cat can do, but I think also just Karl-Anthony Towns has so much gravity himself. Like again, when Brunson's off the floor, if teams are going to load up on Cat, then you have somebody who on the second, can second side attack, right? You swing the ball, and somebody like Clarkson can
Exactly.
take on a one-on-one or a defense that's in rotation and get the ball to the basket or knock down an open shot. And obviously to an extent, like Mikal Bridges does that as well. But like again, somebody who can kind of do that from the quote unquote point guard, the combo guard spot. And I think that doing that, both creating for Cat and then also creating for himself off of the gravity Cat creates, is going to be super important for the Knicks this year.
Absolutely. But what's been really fun to watch is when Brunson and Clarkson share the floor together, just because you have two guys that can create for themselves. And it looks like Clarkson just plays a lot better when he has somebody out there that he knows he can rely on that can also create their own shots, just because it opens up the lane even more for him. And, Clarkson's a shifty guy. I'm calling him Gumby, like just just because the man is able to contort himself in ways just to like find passes or just get to the hoop. So it's great watching him and Brunson share the court. That's been a lot of fun. I think that's been the most pleasant surprise so far with Clarkson, uh, being on this roster so far. But
Yeah, I think those additions are big for the Knicks. I think they did a good job given what they could do in the offseason.
yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. What do you think about the Mike Brown hire? That's because a lot of people were like, Tibbs should have been fired. Some people
Yeah.
understood the firing of Tom Thibodeau. I mean, you cover the Wolves, so Tom
Yeah.
Thibodeau had that stop over there as well. What were your thoughts about that coaching change?
Yeah, so it's funny, like both when Mike Brown was fired last year and then when Tibbs was fired this offseason, and also like when Michael Malone was fired, and obviously I think, that maybe might turn out to be okay. But like all those firings, my initial reaction was like, why? Like, why are those guys getting fired?
Mm,
Um, so like one of those guys is now replacing another one of those guys in Tibbs. But also, like, you have to cover a team every day and watch that team every day to know, like, Tibbs, as you guys know, like Tibbs can wear on a team, he can wear on a fan base, he can wear on media, I'm sure. Like it he's successful to a point, and it's tough because like how do you fire a guy who has had success and went to a conference finals, and but obviously the conference finals aren't the goal, and that's as far as he got with the Bulls. He didn't get out of the first round with the Timberwolves, and so I get it. At the same time, I didn't think Mike Brown should have been fired.
mm.
Yeah, the Kings were off to a rough start last year, but just 2 years prior, he had the Kings, in the 22-23 season, had the number one offense in the entire NBA. Like, he did a really good job with the team that had some mismatched parts, and obviously they've got good players, and but I think he was probably, his staff was part of developing Domantas Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox was really good under Mike Brown,
Mhm.
obviously they ended up moving on from him last year, but he had two 46 plus win seasons with the Kings and was only a little under 500 with some bad luck in close games last year when they fired him. So I thought that was kind of crazy. I think he's a good fit for the Knicks. Obviously, a different type of coach than Tibbs. I know the Knicks were better offensively than defensively, strangely enough, under Tom Thibodeau, um, but I think Mike Brown and his offensive acumen and what he can bring, on that end of the floor, I think is a good hire for the Knicks. It seems to be, from afar, a good move to hire him. Just given the success, I think he kind of got a bad rap. It was like, LeBron's the reason he succeeded early on, but the opportunities he's had since then, he's done a pretty good job. And he obviously was with the Warriors for a long time as an assistant under Steve Kerr. And so he's got a track record of success and a pretty long track record of success in the NBA. So I like the hire by the Knicks.
Yeah, the hire for me, it was like I'm more of like a wait and see type of approach, just
Yeah.
because going from what Tibbs to Mike Brown and with what the front office said, saying, the sole focus is winning a championship. So there's a lot of, high expectation. There's a lot of pressure for Mike Brown to now deliver on that. And, nothing's ever guaranteed in sports, but that's some big shoes and a big obligation to fill. So I don't want to say it's a great hire because now the front office has set that level of expectation. And even though Mike Brown wasn't the first choice, right? Actually, they went to they wanted to get Jason Kidd, they wanted to get
Yeah.
Chris Finch from the Timberwolves. So, the Knicks were looking around before they landed on Mike Brown. And so even though he wasn't the first hire, it's still a wait and see. And that's why, because it wasn't the first hire. You want to see if he can, how far he can take this team. I know it's year one, so he wants to implement his system, and that's still going to be a work in progress as the season progresses. So there's a lot of factors for me to evaluate how he's doing, and it's not going to be, oh well, great, I love the hire. Some people are, and that's great if you have that inclination just because of what he did with Sacramento. But this is a different roster. This is not a high speed roster like the Sacramento Kings with De'Aaron Fox. You don't have the same type of center as Sabonis, who is willing to just swing the rock around left to right, work in the high post, which is like his natural, his forte, I should say. So it's just different. So I got to see how it all plays out. And to be quite honest, just to go through these 7 games, looking at how the Knicks have progressed, they still need to play with that methodical mindset that they had last season. Like there is that still, we gotta not fully grind it up, but play the possession battle, slow it down so that way guys get to their spots. But they have been able to blend in attacking at a high pace, whether that is Towns looking for guys who are cutting the lane, whether that is Brunson just driving to the lane and helping kick it out and just like spraying it out to 3-point shooters and moving at an up tempo pace, working off dribble handoff. So they're implementing some of those things, but it's not going to be that constant upbeat tempo that we saw with the Sacramento Kings, and I'm fine with that. It's that this team is not like that, and I think having a good blend of that helps balance them out.
Yeah, and I agree with wait and see. I mean, like obviously that there's a reason he's been fired multiple times, right? Like there he hasn't had like outside of LeBron, he hasn't had like a massive amount of success. But the track record, especially with the Kings, I thought is good enough, and we'll see how creative he could be with a very different roster. But yeah, I think he's gotten a bad rap as a coach. I think it's probably a good thing to have a different demeanor, mentality, approach than what the last guy was, and it's largely the same roster. So I think it's going to be a pretty intriguing thing to follow throughout the season. But I think there's a good chance that it works out okay.
Yeah, hopefully it does, man. Hopefully it does. And for things working out, before we get into there, I want to shout out to one of our sponsors, and our first sponsor is Square, man. I want to shout out Square before we get into the whole intel on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Square, this episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spot runs on Square. These businesses are what make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. When we show up as a community, it can mean big business for local business owners. Money spent in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood. Take this ad as an excuse to go support your favorite local spot and have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/KFTV to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. All right, got to just shout out our sponsor, Square. Now let's get back to it. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boy. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Ben, let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves for a bit, because this is a team that also has some high aspirations after making it to the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row, one with Karl-Anthony Towns. Then you make the mega trade, get Julius and Dante. You get back to the Western Conference Finals, would lose to the OKC Thunder, who would then win the entire thing. What's the expectation for this season? Is it the same thing? Is it to go further? What are the Timberwolves trying to do here?
Yeah, I mean it's conference finals 2 years in a row, so it would be kind of. I think it would be. I think the only thing to say would be championship or bust, right? I mean, you got an ascending Anthony Edwards. I know like all the FanDuel and all the books had the Timberwolves a little bit down this year, the over under, and everybody's picking obviously OKC, but Denver, obviously got better this offseason, and the West is just an absolute beast. So it's fair to wonder if they can get back to that level, but the Timberwolves really, the roster didn't change very much. They only lost one rotation guy, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and otherwise they're running it back, and Anthony Edwards should be even better this year. He's made a leap, kind of incremental improvements each of the last few years. He's been all NBA second team the last couple of seasons. He's pretty much globally thought of as like a top 6 player. Like there's like a clear top 4, I think, on most rankings. Then it's either him or Wemby that's 5 or 6. And like there's no reason that they shouldn't be right in the conversation for a championship. At the same time, filling that Nickeil Alexander-Walker role is a challenge. It's going to be a young guy. It's going to be some combination of Rob Dillingham or Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, and unproven guys. But my counter to that has always just been, look, 7 of the top 8 guys are the same. Ant's an ascending star who's not yet in his prime. Jaden McDaniels has been awesome so far this year. He's still getting better. Same draft class as Anthony Edwards. So I don't see the case for the team not being better. And if that's the case, they've gone to the conference finals 2 straight years. Last year they only won 49 games in the regular season, so I think it's fair to say, 2 years ago it was 56 with Cat. They won 56 games. I mean, the goal should be to get a top four seed. So that's probably going to be at least 52, 53 wins in the West. And then obviously to go to the finals and hopefully win the finals. But they're going to be right there at the end of the season in the West, and hopefully all the way to the actual NBA finals.
Hey, that was big aspirations. And look, they're right there with the Knicks. And, when you look at the ascension of Anthony Edwards, have you seen him change up his game? Because I know last year there was like a little bit of too much of an over reliance on three. Do you see him going back to doing what he did when he first entered the league, incorporating that mid range, getting downhill, just kind of being that complete three level scorer?
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to find the right kind of place to put the shot meter, right? Like where how much are we waiting perimeter versus in the paint? He's
Hmm.
never really been like a massive mid-range diet guy. Like his rookie season, Finch got hired midway through his rookie season, and Finch kind of like got him to stop shooting mid-range jumpers for a while, and but he got to the rim a lot. In the last 2 years, like you alluded to, he got to the rim less. It improved as the year went on last year. And he did shoot a ton of threes, but he both took and made more threes than anybody else in the entire NBA. He was just a shade under 40% when it was all said and done. So the volume stuff worked. It was his best offensive season. But there's two pieces to that. One, he does need to get to the line more often. Like, how does Shea Gilgeous-Alexander do what he does? I mean, he's obviously incredible, but he's also incredible at getting to the free throw line. And there's a few points a game that Ant doesn't get because he isn't going to the rim quite as much as he used to. This is a whole other topic. I think a pretty sound theory about him not getting enough free throws. I think there's a bit of what I call a Shaq effect, where he's so big and strong, he finishes through contact. He doesn't try and avoid contact. And
Mm.
so it doesn't impact him. And so he doesn't get as many foul calls. He's also athletic enough. He can avoid contact if he wants to. And so he doesn't get the glancing blows aren't seen by the officials because Ant just plays through it. He's like a fullback, right? He's like a big running back where he's just playing through the contact. So that's a piece of it. And then I think the other thing you mentioned, the mid-range game, I think it's important to have it in the bag so that you can go to it, especially, end of clock situation, shot clock, end of quarter, end of game, where you just got to get a shot up, and you need to have that in the bag. You need to be able to do it. And it also keeps defenses honest a little bit. I think it should be the least frequent shot he shoots. Like even the guys that were the best at it, Kobe and obviously Michael Jordan and guys like that, or Kevin Garnett had a great mid-range turnaround in a Timberwolves uniform. It's not the most efficient shot, but it's important to be able to go to it when you need it. And so I think being able to do that was what the word was. He spent all offseason working on the mid-range game and trying to kind of hone that. And he wasn't great in clutch situations last year. The Timberwolves were bad in close late clutch situations. So I think that could be an important tool in the toolbox for him to be able to go to it so that teams aren't like, all right, he's either going to the rim or he's jacking up a three. To be able to do everything in between is also going to be important. So yeah, I do think we're seeing that progression, and he keeps getting better. Like last year, last offseason, it was he needs to improve the 3-point shot. And what did he do? He made more threes than anyone else in the NBA. So now what happens this year? Now he's only played in basically 2 games. He played like 6 minutes at the start of the third game and then left with the hamstring injury. He's questionable to play Wednesday night. I would be willing to bet that almost every time Ant has been questionable in his career, he plays. But this is the first time it's like a soft tissue injury. It's a
Mm.
hamstring. If it was an ankle, I'd be like, yeah, he's playing. Don't just consider him playing. I bet they're a little more cautious because it's a hamstring. I bet it's truly 50-50 that he plays Wednesday night. But I'd be surprised if he wasn't back by the weekend.
Now, did he go through practice today? I did see that,
Yeah,
right?
he did. He practiced Tuesday, and Chris Finch seemed to like be completely transparent when he said, I have no idea if he's playing tomorrow. The team officially said he's questionable, but he's been ruled out, the last few games. This is the first time he's actually on there as questionable. So there's a chance he plays. It's a hammy though. So like it's a bit, if I were the Timberwolves, I'd be really cautious.
Hmm.
Selfishly, I'd love to see him play, but I'll be nervous the whole
For
time if
sure.
he's playing on Wednesday.
For sure. I was it. Got to see Ant play at the Garden, and my God, that is a guy that everyone should take the time to go watch because I don't know how he does it, man, but that his athleticism, it's like when he makes a move, it's like he's running on clouds,
Hmm.
and like to still do it with the force that he has to attack the rim, it's just insane. It's a crazy combination.
Yep.
I
That
don't think I've seen anything like that and since like I would say it was like a bigger, I'm not saying the skill of Nate Robinson, but like Nate Robinson for his size and his
Yeah.
power, right? Like he and his athleticism, he was just able to like float, put that in a bigger body and a more talented body, like Anthony Edwards, and that's essentially what it is to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of Dwayne Wade to the way the combination of power and athleticism.
That's a good one
He's a better shooter than Wade, and he's a little bigger. But that's a like a more like I think a decent modern comp. But yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. The combination of like athleticism and power, the fluidity, all at the same time, and that quick first step. He can really do anything on the court, and it's just breathtaking to watch him, take off for a dunk, or you don't know what he's going to do when he takes off. And the moments on the defensive end too. I mean, he's had game-saving blocks each of the last 2 years at the end of
hmm
regulation against the Pacers 2 years ago, the Thunder last year, and it's just he comes out of nowhere, blocks the ball up by the square, like stuff like that. That you just that's what you're paying to see, and Ant can do anything at any point in time when he's on the court.
For sure, for sure. But there's other guys on this team that have contributed mightily, especially for their success, and those guys are Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. Dante being named the starting point guard for this season for the Timberwolves, and the Julius Randle, seeing some numbers, he looks like he's an more efficient player than he was on the Knicks with Minnesota. So let's start off with Dante first. How's he been doing?
Yeah, as you mentioned, he started the year in the starting lineup. He was not in the preseason. It was kind of a surprise that on opening night in Portland, they said he was going to be starting in place of Mike Conley, who then moved to the bench. And then now Conley's been starting since the hand injury. So they've both been starting together. Dante's been great. I don't know if they ever officially said that he broke his nose the other night. I don't know if you saw that nasty injury, but he took an elbow against Charlotte on Saturday, or
Oof.
yeah, somebody came down, hit him right on the nose, came back in the game with no mask, just like crooked nose, blood everywhere,
Oh
played the
wow.
rest of the game. It was crazy. If you haven't seen it, like people got to go look at it. It's gross. And then he played with the mask on Monday against Brooklyn and played awesome. And so there's all these like mask Dante looks like Knicks Dante in terms of scoring. Like he had 20. I think he led the team with scoring with 25 on Monday.
Mm.
Overall, like his numbers are actually pretty similar to what he did with the Knicks most of the time starter a couple of years ago. He's shooting like 43% for three. He's averaging like I think 16 a game, just a little over 15 a game right now. He's still obviously trying to kind of find it. He's not a natural point guard, and he's a point guard in name because like everybody starts a point guard. But when he's on the court with Ant's the one that's doing more of the operating, and Dante can catch and shoot. He got up like 13 threes on Monday night, so he's just right now he's played really well off Julius Randle. They have a nice two-man game. He's playing really well with Jaden McDaniels, who's been awesome. So DiVincenzo's been really, really good. I think maybe they could use a little more from him defensively. The Wolves defense has not been great.
Mm.
And having Ant out hurts because he's a really good defender. But I think if Dante can pick it up a little defensively on the offensive end, he's been fantastic so far this year.
Okay, and then you got Julius. So what about Julius? How was Julius doing with the Timberwolves?
I mean, we're 7 games in, so I say this with all the caution in the world, but like if the season just magically ended after 7 games, this is the best season of his career. And I know he was an all-star a couple times with the Knicks. So like that's where the numbers are at, right?
Mm.
Now there's an element of Ants out, so like he's got the ball in his hands a lot more, but he's also not trying to do too much. And it's funny because last year Randall missed about a month with injury and even talked about this in the media. Like he came back, he saw the team was playing without him and how the ball moved and all this stuff. And he came back and he was awesome. And he dominated against the Lakers in the playoffs. He killed Draymond Green in the second round of the playoffs last year. It struggled against the Thunder, but everyone struggled against the Thunder. And he looks like that guy.
Mm.
And he's averaging 26 a game. The 3-point shot is again like I don't think he finishes the season at 43%, but it would be the second time in his career he's over 40%. So everything is trending in the right direction for Julius Randle. He's having an awesome start to the year. He had a triple double. I think his is like 13th in his career, but first in a Timberwolves uniform on Monday. So like everything is clicking for Julius Randle. The decision making is good. He's not trying to do too much, either passing or scoring, and sometimes he does. Like he toggles the lever too much towards one thing or the other, and it's like I'm going to pass, I'm going to make a crazy pass, or I'm going to score no matter what. But he's making the right decisions, and he's fitting in really well with the team. And so then the next question is when Ant does come back, whether it's Wednesday or Friday or next week, will the offense flow the way it has without Ant? With Julius Randle really kind of, I mean, he's the point forward right now. Like he's the straw that stirs the drink for the Timberwolves offense, and he's doing a really good job.
Okay, and wasn't it kind of like that in the postseason too? So don't you think you saw that in the postseason last year? Don't you think that could continue for this season too?
I do. Yeah, yeah. I have. I think. I mean, you got to remember, like you guys know that that trade happened the eve of training camp last year, so it took forever for everybody to get comfortable in their new cities with their new teams, and even more so for DiVincenzo. But it really wasn't until like each both DiVincenzo and Randle missed a month apiece, like in the January, February, March timeframe last year, and it overlapped a little bit. And then when everybody was back in mid late March, things clicked. The Wolves finished the year on like a I don't know 15-6 run over the last 20 21 games. Um, and each of those guys are a big part of it. They were both awesome in the playoffs. And now, of course, you're dealing with the Ant injury and DiVincenzo getting nicked up a little bit early in this year or in this season. But I think we've seen what that can look like when all those guys are healthy and on the floor and sharing the basketball. And I have pretty high confidence that they can make it work. Julius Randle and Chris Finch are a really good match for one another. Finch loves to use Randle as a point forward. Randle loves that Finch trusts him. They were together in New Orleans briefly when Finch was an assistant and offensive coordinator down there a few years ago. So there's history there, and I think there's a lot of trust. And Ant loves Finch, and I think they can get it all together. The best case version of this offense is definitely a really, really good offense. I mean, last year it was sixth, I think, in the league when it was all said and done. And I think top five offense is definitely a possibility for this team.
Okay, there you go. Ben says top five offense for this Minnesota Timberwolves team is possible. Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you for all tuning for another game of the week preview. Hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. With me on the other side is my guy Ben Beacon. He covers the Minnesota Timberwolves for Locked On Timberwolves, all right, part of the Locked On Network. So make sure to go check him out there. And hey, while you're here, make sure to support our new sponsor, Rula, okay? So let's talk about Rula for a second. Look, taking care of your mental health shouldn't be harder than taking care of your physical health. If you pull a muscle, you go see a doctor. But when it comes to finding the right therapist, subtly it's frustrating. You've got long wait lists, you're staring down a huge out-of-pocket cost. That's what usually stops people from getting help. That's where Rula comes in. Rula makes therapy simple, affordable, and fast. They work with most major insurance plans, and the average session copay is just $15. That's right, 15 bucks. That's basically the cost of lunch. But instead of a sandwich, you're investing in your own headspace. And with Rula, you're not just matched and left to figure it out. They check in and make sure you're actually making progress. Every therapist on the platform is licensed, vetted, and picked for their expertise. So you know you're talking to someone legit, not just whoever happens to be available. Getting started couldn't be easier. You answer a few quick questions about what matters to you, and Rule connects you with in-network providers who actually fit your needs. You pick the time, and you could be talking to a therapist as soon as the next day. No weeks of waiting, no endless back and forth. Bottom line, if you've been putting this off, Rule takes away the excuses. Simple, affordable, and actually built to help you get better. So make sure to go support Rula, or if you need help, okay? So if you need help, make sure to go to Rula. Go to rula.com/KFTV and get started today. That's Rula, RULA.com/KFTV. Take the first step, get connected, and take control of your mental health. All right, back to the program, back to the show. Let's talk about this matchup, Ben. We got a game happening tomorrow between the Knicks and the Timberwolves. And like I said earlier when I started the show, you know there's a little bit of bad blood, man. You know these teams, not necessarily the teams, I should say, but the players who were involved in the big trade want to prove a point, you know? There's always that little bit of sense of like, you gave up too early on me, man. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. Like we already discussed, the Knicks, it's going to be a blend of like slow pace, up-tempo beat, trying to get these guys off, uneven when it comes to their style of attack. And the defense has been pretty solid. This team likes to generate a lot of turnovers right now. How do you think the Timberwolves will match up with tomorrow's game? What's their play style?
Yeah, Timberwolves don't play very fast in general. I think it's one of the things I've been hoping. I think Chris Finch wants them to play faster, depending on, especially like Gobert's off the floor. The Timberwolves are better when Rudy Gobert's on the floor by a lot, actually. And one of the biggest problems has been when he's off the floor, the defense just craters. Minnesota wants to play slow. They are a really good three-point shooting team, an inconsistent rebounding team. I worried a little bit about the offensive rebounding of the Knicks. I know they've been good to this point this year, and I'm assuming Mitchell Robinson's not playing, but like even still, they're a good offensive rebounding team. I think this is one of those matchups where Minnesota needs to be careful to not get sucked into playing faster. To your point, like the Knicks can if they want to, and Minnesota in theory can, but like honestly, they play faster when Ant doesn't play because Ant is the guy as crazy as it is that likes to slow things down. He likes to survey the floor. He likes to get his he likes to shoot pull up threes, and kind of let everybody catch up. So if Ant doesn't play, the Wolves may end up playing a little bit at a faster pace. But my biggest concerns for this game are the perimeter defense because there's enough guys you got to worry about on the Knicks. Obviously starting with Jalen Brunson, but beyond that with Bridges and everything. Like Minnesota's perimeter defense with no Anthony Edwards has been up and down. The name I would say to keep an eye out for that Knicks fans may not be familiar with is Jalen Clark, and I think he may get some significant minutes guarding Jalen Brunson. Obviously, Jaden McDaniels is a guy that everybody knows as he was all defensive second team a couple years ago. He's been phenomenal on both ends so far this year. But I don't necessarily. He may start on Brunson, but I think he's a better match to guard somebody like Bridges. He's also got a better chance at not getting sucked into foul trouble there, I think. Whereas Brunson will draw him into his web, and that'll be an issue. Jalen Clark is a really a third-year guy. He was the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year in college at UCLA a couple of years ago, but tore his Achilles at the end of college. So he was a second-round pick, but a lottery talent. And he's a phenomenal perimeter defender, great point of attack defender, a bulldog. He's like 6'4", 6'5", but he's really strong. Lays in the weeds, gets steals in the backcourt all the time, really good in the half court. So I think that's a name people aren't really familiar with, and I think he'll get a lot of time guarding Jalen Brunson. And I think he'll play a pretty big role in this game.
Okay, interesting. And so but Connolly's been in the starting rotation, right? So with this lineup. So if we're looking at the starting lineups, are you going to tell me that McDaniels would probably start off on Brunson?
I think he'd probably start on Brunson, yeah. And I think inevitably what's going to happen is he's going to get into foul trouble or when they start to make substitutions, I think Clark and then also TJ Shannon, who's a second-year guy, was a 5-year college guy, was a rookie last year, so he's an older second-year guy. He's been spotty defensively, but he's a big kind of physical defender, and I think he'll get an opportunity. So if McDaniels gets into foul trouble early, I think they go right to Jalen Clark. If he doesn't, I think the natural substitution pattern as that happens, they're not going to put Conley on Brunson. I'm sure the Knicks will try and get that switch. Conley has not been good defensively in a little while, and so like teams are hunting that switch in the playoffs last year. I actually think the Conley's decline defensively is a bigger issue than his decline offensively because teams will try and hunt that matchup, but he's a good team defender if they can kind of hide him a little bit. So undoubtedly the Knicks will try and get Brunson going against Conley. The Timberwolves will try and avoid that. Besides Conley, the rest of their perimeter defenders are pretty switchable. So I think McDaniel starts on Brunson, but I also think we see a lot of Jalen Clark guarding him ultimately as well. And they'll try and avoid Mike Conley getting involved in that matchup.
Of course. But look, as you said, the Knicks are going to try to get that switch. They're trying to get that matchup. I'm very curious to see, the rest of it. And look, for tomorrow, as of right now, there's been no one reported for the Knicks on the injury report, so I expect Mitchell Robinson to be in that starting rotation. So, I'm expecting Mitch to match up with Gobert. I'm expecting, let's see, who else? If you're going to have Connolly out there, you probably put OG on Julius, I feel like.
Yeah,
and
I
then
think so.
Put Cat on McDaniels, or even Connolly for that matter. It's going to be funky, man, just watching how this team matches up. Put Brunson on probably McDaniels just for offensive purposes, even Dante.
Yeah, teams will honestly, they'll put their worst defender on Conley and just let him play essentially free safety and sag off of him. And obviously Conley can still knock down threes. So that's the danger if you do that. But everybody knows he's not trying to attack the rim. So you can kind of play with fire there if with Conley because, you don't want to give up a wide open three, but that's really the only thing he's trying to do offensively is move the ball and shoot threes. So you could definitely do that. Teams will also put, a smaller defender on Rudy Gobert because they know that like the Wolves aren't running plays for Gobert. They're not running post-ups for Gobert, although he's been more aggressive. The Timberwolves have been more aggressive throwing him lobs, and that really started in the playoffs last year. And yeah, Gobert doesn't have the best hands in the world, but I mean, you give the man enough lobs, he's going to get some dunks. He's going to get to the free throw line. The fouls are going to stack up, and the Wolves have basically said, look, if you're going to try and put a small on Gobert, we're going to throw him lobs. He's going to get offensive boards, and it's been mostly effective. So now the Knicks, I don't think are a team that's going to do that because of Mitchell Robinson, because of the size with Cat and everything. So I don't know that we see that necessarily, but you might see it where you put the worst defender on Conley and just kind of, see what happens.
Yeah, and that's either going to be Brunson or Cat that you put out there. Maybe you put probably for height purposes, you put Brunson on Connolly, and then you put Cat on McDaniels, and then you're going to have OG on Randle. You keep Mitch with Gobert, and then you probably put Bridges on Dante. It's just going to be the Cat and the Brunson, I guess, dilemma of like which defender do you want on Connolly? And I would probably say probably want a quicker guy to still match up with Connolly. I don't know, just because he still is a guard, and you don't want to leave necessarily Cat on an island to have a guard go past him. So maybe you put him on McDaniel's and just let him use his wingspan, just try to keep up with that. And McDaniel's not necessarily a lethal offensive threat. Not saying that Connolly is, but Connolly a little bit more of a dangerous offensive threat than McDaniel's is.
Yeah, I would have said that, certainly 12 months ago. I mean, right now, like if Conley gets past somebody, it's to create a shot for somebody else. Like he will not shoot the ball at the rim unless he absolutely has to. Jaden McDaniels on the flip side, I was as hard on him as anybody last couple of years because I thought offensively he needed to give them more, and he has, especially since Ant has been out. So if Ant does come back, then the question is like, what's Jaden's role look like? But McDaniels is averaging almost 19 a game. He had 20 plus 22 or something like that against Brooklyn on Monday. He's shooting 46% from three. Like McDaniels has actually been really assertive offensively and been trying to get to the rim. He shoots this weird little like leaner. It's almost like a Kevin Durant fall away when he gets to like 10, 12 feet, and it's unblockable because he's 6'11", and he's like parallel to the floor when he shoots it. So McDaniels is actually a little bit more of a weapon than he ever has been in the past. And if he's going right, it adds another element to the Wolves offense. On the flip side, he gets into foul trouble a lot. So that's the other thing is if he's guarding Brunson and he's having to go hard on both ends, and then he gets into foul trouble, then that's going to limit his effectiveness on offense then as well.
Yeah, I can see that happening. It's going to be interesting how the defensive matchup plays out for tomorrow's game. But when I'm looking more at the numbers of these teams and seeing who does what, it's actually funny when you look at the pace. Actually, both the Knicks and the Timberwolves are like right there when it comes to pace of play. Timberwolves are 22nd, Knicks are 23rd, both at with 99. Timberwolves are just 99.09 when it comes to pace of play, and then Knicks are 99.06. So won't be too much of guys just run up and down the court, but should be a good battle, physical battle nonetheless. But when you're starting to look deeper into these two teams and like what they like to do, I'm looking forward to see how it comes to battling in the paint because look, I know there's one thing that Julius likes to do is that it's to get downhill, and so does Joe and Brunson, and they're trying to create easier looks around there. Now, when it comes to the Timberwolves, they are in the middle of the pack when it comes to points in the paint. They're 15th right now. Knicks, they've been very hot from shooting from downtown as of late, so they haven't really had to get into the paint as much. So they are 28th, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to get downhill as much as possible because what Mike Brown has been preaching is to get the paint touches to generate threes. But if the shot's there, they're going to take the shot.
Yeah, the Timberwolves have done a pretty good job defending the paint. At least, I mean, it's tough. The last two games were Brooklyn and Charlotte, which are not teams that are going to kill you inside or really at all. I mean, Charlotte's a good offensive team, but neither of them are like gonna kill you in the paint. So it's tough to really kind of. And they played Denver, who's obviously incredible in the paint. So it's tough. I think Minnesota overall has been pretty good at defending the paint. The problem has been on the perimeter and allowing penetration. Gobert is still a really good rim protector. Jaden McDaniels, what the Wolves would like to do is treat him as a free safety and just allow him to roam and help side block shots. I don't know that if Ant's out, they can't really afford to do that, especially against the Knicks with the guys on the perimeter between Brunson and Clarkson and Bridges and guys that can score off the dribble, even Anunoby. Like, I don't think you can get away with that with McDaniels against the Knicks. So, yeah, I mean, it's really just Gobert. And like Naz Reid's a decent switchable defender. He's much better than he used to be, but he's not a traditional shot blocker. And obviously Julius Randle's not either. So points in the paint are an area. And again, I mentioned offensive rebounding. That's an area that would concern me for the Wolves. So that's something to keep an eye on is overall scoring in the paint, whether it is second chance points or simply off of penetration, where the Wolves can't contain and then they can score because Gobert is really the only guy back there besides McDaniels that's going to block shots. And then on the flip side, the Timberwolves are like you said, middle of the pack points to the paint. Again, if Ant plays, that changes because he gets into the paint more often. He creates more opportunities. If he doesn't, it's really just like what McDaniels can give you and then what Julius Randle can give you. And that's kind of it. There's like Nas scores in the paint a little bit, but he'd rather shoot threes and they're not like that's one of the things is they have to generate more opportunities at the free throw line and they haven't been great at it so far. So points to the paint is definitely something to keep an eye on in this game.
Yeah, and look, when you talk about second chance opportunities, as you mentioned, the Knicks right now are 13th. Now, granted, Mitch hasn't been healthy to play every single game, but he's a big factor as to how the Knicks do get their second chance opportunities. Not saying that Hart and Towns haven't done their fair share while Mitch has missed some games, but Mitch is a big factor for just getting a lot of offensive rebounds. It wasn't too long ago, prior to him missing most of last season, year prior to that, he was in the top of the league before he got injured when it came to offensive rebounding. Him and Steven Adams were just leading the leagues 1 and 2, damn near tied for a little bit, just trying to get offensive boards. So if Mitch should be playing tomorrow because there's no one's on the injury report for the Knicks. I do expect the Knicks to try to take advantage of that if they're not hitting their shots. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is fast break points. Now, we already mentioned the pace of play, it's going to be slow. But when it comes to getting out in transition and getting easy buckets, both these teams are in the basement when it comes to getting out there and scoring in transition. The Knicks are tied for 21st. They're in a 4-way tie when it comes to scoring in transition, which is they're averaging, what's the number right here? 13.9 points per game. Timberwolves are 28th right now with 12.7. So both of these teams, as we've talked about, are not going to get out there and run. But I feel like the breaking factor for this game is who gets the easy points and scoring out in transition. Not saying that these teams can't do it, but as of late, the Knicks have won their last 2 games against Chicago and Washington because they did finally get out there and start to score over 20 plus points out in transition, making it easier on themselves to win games.
Yeah, and the Wolves have now for the last like 3 years, really since Gobert came to Minnesota under Chris Finch, um, the Timberwolves don't run very much at all in transition, but when they do, they're really good, and they really don't run after rebounds. They run a little bit after steals. Like if you look at some of the numbers on like cleaning the glass, like the frequency of running after steals or after forcing opponent turnovers is actually decently high. But they don't do enough of forcing opponent turnovers either. They don't gamble a lot as a defense, which is a good thing overall, but I think they leave points on the table on the offensive end because they aren't aggressive enough trying to generate steals and turn them into points, and they don't run enough off of opponent misses. So I agree with that. I mean, like Minnesota's middle of the pack so far this season, as are the Knicks in terms of forcing opponent turnovers. They're both like hovering around that midway or midpoint across the NBA in terms of forcing opponent turnovers. And if one team does that better than the other, if one team's sloppier than the other offensively and allows there to be more fast break opportunities, that could be a big difference in a game that's probably going to be pretty close. Again, without Ant, like the offense, in theory, the offense you should need to generate more easy offense by creating turnovers and then running. But the offense has actually been really good the last few games, albeit against really bad defenses. But the overall ball movement has been great. Not saying that like I'm not at all like nobody hear me say that the Wolves are like better on offense without Ant, but not having Ant means they've had to be better at moving the basketball, and Julius has had to do some different stuff, and it's gone really well against some bad defenses. That could change against a good defensive team like the Knicks. So again, more opportunities in transition are better, and the Timberwolves as a team have overall been okay defending in transition. But it's not consistent. I mean, it's kind of like the defensive rebound, and it really just depends on the night. They're either great at it or they're not, and there's not a whole lot of in between. So it's a bit of a dice roll. And so whichever team can force more turnovers and then capitalize on that on the fast break, I think is going to have a big edge in this game.
These teams sound very similar, Ben.
Yeah.
These teams sound very similar. But once again, we're all have to see how it unfolds for tomorrow. But there is one big matchup that I'm looking at. And the big matchup in this one, the key matchup, as I like to say, is between Karl-Anthony Towns and Julius Randle. Now, both these guys not known for their defense, but they are both known for their offense. So it's either going to be fireworks or Birkin shots. Because look, Cat finally had his first good game yesterday against the Washington Wizards. He dropped 33. He dropped a Ewing on him. And so, look, if he can continue to show that he's in a good rhythm, because he has been dealing with a quad injury since the start of the season. He made the comments of saying, he's still trying to figure out how he fits into this Mike Brown offensive system. Like he needs to come out rolling tomorrow because he's a big reason as to why the Knicks are going to have success this year. And we know what he can do. We know he can shoot the threes. We know he likes to drive to get to the cup. We know he's not the greatest post player, but he can work the post when given the opportunity. So we know he's going to try to get his where he sees it fit. Now, Julius, we know what Julius is as well. That man is you talk about he's not the greatest 3-point shooter, but he can be a three-level scorer depending on the night. He is the playmaker. He is a point forward, and he's going to be trying to create for that team and create for himself as well. So it's going to be very interesting watching these two guys lead their teams to victory.
Yeah, going to be interested to see how much they match up. I know we were trying to figure that out earlier, like how much they actually go at each other. I mean, last year, the first game was at Target Center, and Towns had I think he had a 30-20 game. And Randle was good too, but it was like a Knicks blowout win. And then when the Wolves won at MSG in January, um, I think Cat missed the game. I think DiVincenzo missed the game. I think Julius Randle had like a single-digit scoring night. So it was weird. The Wolves won that one pretty easily. So both matchups were kind of strange last year. I was worried about Randle trying to do too much when he went to Madison Square Garden last year as a visitor for the first time, and it was kind of the opposite. He wasn't super aggressive.
No, he wasn't. He was like
Yeah,
a decoy out there almost.
yeah, it was like he was trying to like he was like that in his very first game in a Timberwolves uniform. It was at the Lakers, and it was like the same thing. Like he was afraid to step on toes, which doesn't sound like Julius Randle at all. Um, so curious to see what that looks like. I mean, he's been very aggressive recently. He's been playing awesome, like we talked about. So I think he will be aggressive, especially if there's no Anthony Edwards. And I would expect the same from Cat. And it should be a lot of fun. I mean, I do think the Knicks are a better defensive team than Minnesota. They're both pretty good offensive teams and certainly have very high ceilings offensively. So I think it could be a high scoring game. I think it could be even though neither team plays really fast. But I think that the defensive struggles of Minnesota and hopefully the offensive firepower that's been showing up a little bit with Randle and McDaniels will help Minnesota to a pretty good offensive night as well. So hoping that we get to see some Randle and Cat, match up against each other. That should be a lot of fun at the Garden.
These two, they both went to Kentucky, so they both
Yeah.
got a chip on their shoulder when they
Yeah.
face each other. And even prior to these guys being traded, when Randall was a Knick and Towns was a T-Wolf, like they'd still want to compete and show who's the better product out of Kentucky. So I'm expecting to still see that, that matchup continue, even though they've swapped jerseys. Now, get into the last topic before we wrap. Who's your X factor for tomorrow? So who's your X factor for the T-Wolves, Ben?
I'm gonna go with. I want to go with. So, well, I don't know. I guess I'll go with Jaden McDaniels. I was gonna say Jalen Clark, but he's not gonna score enough for that to like really pop on the stat sheet. I think Jaden McDaniels has got to be him because if he stays out of foul trouble, that's huge for the Timberwolves defense, and it's also big for their offense, especially if Ant doesn't play. And people don't know him as a scorer. And to this point in his career, he hasn't been a scorer. He was the fourth option last year. Really, a couple years ago, he was the fifth option in the starting lineup. Like Gobert was really getting more opportunities than him, Conley, and now he's with Ant out. He's the number 2 guy after Julius Randle as a scorer, and like he's gonna have the ball in his hands as much as Dante DiVincenzo in the half court, and he's got to stay out of foul trouble, and he's also got to defend well. And then he's got to knock down the open shots when he gets them, be aggressive offensively. And he's not a guy that most people think of when it comes to the Timberwolves offense, and understandably so. So I think it's going to be McDaniels in this game, and really on both ends of the floor.
So you're going with McDaniels as your X factor. I'm going to go with Josh Hart as my X factor for tomorrow's game. And some people say, Alex, Josh Hart is typically an X factor for most of the next 10 years, and I hear that, but last season, he was a mainstay. You could kind of guess or predict what he was going to give you. He had a lot of triple doubles last year, provided some solid defense, was a playmaker, gave you some decent scoring last year as well for being a role player in this Knicks system. But for this season, dealing with his injuries, especially with the knee, the finger that's crooked, coming from a back, back soreness. After for the preseason against the Philadelphia 76ers, he's battling through a lot of injuries right now. So, and you see it every time he gets up after, hustling and diving on the deck, trying to fight for a loose ball or whatever, he's coming back grimacing. Even after a hard screen, he's like grimacing after every single contact. So you see he's dealing with some pain. But the last two games, after having a poor game against the Chicago Bulls, the first matchup against the Bulls, he's bounced back these last two games and has provided the Josh Hart role. He had a double-double last night. He's getting you good scoring, attacking out in transition, being a playmaker, playing some solid defense. He won Defensive Player of the Game as Mike Brown has now implemented for this team. So these guys get a hard hat and some Tims that they get to rock around their necks after a game to show who had the best defense. So Josh Hart is starting to get back into doing Josh Hart things. And I feel like for tomorrow's game, where rebounding is going to be a big thing, playing defense, it's just screaming like, yo, you're going to need somebody else outside of OG and Bridges to do something. You're going to have to win the possession battle, grabbing some boards. That sounds like a Josh Hart game to me, man. So I'm going to go with Josh Hart as my X factor for tomorrow's game.
I like
it. So there we have it. So we got McDaniels and Josh Hart as the X factors. Should be a good one, man. I'm looking forward to it. Ben, I appreciate you coming through and breaking down this game with me, my man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. Please let the people know where they can find you. If you got any work up and coming, we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, Lockdown Wolves, wherever you listen to podcasts, YouTube, everything. And then on X at B Beacon with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. All things Timberwolves. We do 5 shows a week. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
There you go. There you have it. Make sure to follow Ben. He does phenomenal work covering the Timberwolves. So make sure to go give him a follow on all socials and go check out his show. And yo, Knicks Nation, and even T-Wolves Nation. I know some of you are in here right now checking us out. Make sure that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Okay. Appreciate you all for coming through. Shout out to all the franchise channel members that were in here. Let me give you guys a shout out. We got Don Q89 in here. I see Will Rose in here. Shout out to you as well. I know I saw John Talento in here earlier. We got Vic from the Sty. Shout out to you. We got Ray Nobles. Shout out to you as well. We got Flo 1742. Appreciate you for being in here. Appreciate all you for tapping in for a game of the week preview, getting ready for this New York Knicks team to face the Minnesota Timberwolves tomorrow at Madison Square Garden. So make sure to tune into that. Make sure to get ready for the shows that we got for tomorrow as well. We got play-by-play. We got post-game as always. So make sure to tap in for that. And then, hey, remember to support our sponsors, all right? We got Square, so make sure to go to square.com/go/KFTV to make sure you support your local neighborhood businesses. And make sure if you need mental help, all right, you need therapy, make sure to go support our new sponsor, all right, Rula, okay? Make sure to go support Rula as well. And if you don't remember to go to Rula, just go to rula.com/KFTV if you need therapy, all right? So make sure to go support Rula as well if you need help. And hey, make sure to tap into the newsletter. That's where you get all the info. That's where you get all the updates. Got some great articles. Support our writers over there. A lot of stuff we got going on at KFTV. So make sure to support everything. All right, Knicks Nation. We'll catch you next time. All right? We out.
And then respond by giving the city 62 and stay mellow, knowing who among us the crossover.